The invitation's edge, the cream-colored envelope sat untouched on Vivian Parker's coffee table for nearly a week. Each morning she'd glance at it while sipping her tea, knowing exactly what it contained, an invitation to watch the man who'd shattered her heart marry someone else. When she finally slid her finger beneath the wax seal, the elegant calligraphy confirmed her suspicions. Thomas Elliot, her ex-fiancé of just 9 months, was marrying Natalie Reed, the woman he'd claimed was just a colleague during their 3-year relationship. "You can't seriously be considering going," said her roommate Paige, watching Vivian's face carefully. "That's emotional self-sabotage." Vivian traced the embossed lettering with her fingertip. "It's at the Bellevue Hotel, the exact venue we had reserved before he—" She didn't finish the sentence. "All the more reason to burn that invitation and block his number completely," Paige insisted, pouring herself more coffee. "He's either cruel or oblivious inviting you there." But something beyond hurt pride tugged at Vivian. Perhaps it was the financial analyst in her, always needing closure, always requiring that final balanced equation. Whatever his reasons for inviting her, Thomas had left her life in disarray, questions unanswered, plans abandoned, and a subtle, persistent feeling that she'd missed something important. "I need to go," she said finally. "Not for him, but for me." The night of the wedding arrived with unseasonable rain that gleamed on the pavement outside the Grand Hotel. Vivian stepped from the taxi in a midnight blue dress that had cost more than she'd ever spent on a single item of clothing. The doorman nodded respectfully as she passed, umbrella in hand. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected off marble floors, and the distant string quartet played something melancholy and refined. Vivian steeled herself at the entrance to the ballroom, scanning for familiar faces and planning her strategy. A quick appearance, perhaps a civil congratulation, then a dignified exit. What she hadn't prepared for was the isolation. Thomas had seated her at a table far from the main party with place cards for people she barely remembered from college, none of whom appeared to have attended. As the reception began, she sat alone, nursing a glass of champagne and questioning her decision to come. "I believe this might be the saddest wedding tableau I've ever witnessed," came a voice from behind her, deep and slightly accented. Vivian turned to find a tall man with intense eyes watching her with undisguised interest. His tailored suit suggested wealth, but his demeanor, alert, observant, slightly detached from the festivities, set him apart from the other guests. "Roman Fleming," he introduced himself, taking the seat beside her without waiting for an invitation. "And you must be the ex-fiancé everyone's whispering about." Vivian straightened her shoulders. "Is it that obvious?" The beautiful woman sitting alone at the reject table while shooting occasional daggers at the groom? "No, completely subtle." His smile softened the observation. Before she could respond, she noticed Thomas watching them from across the room, his expression shifting from surprise to something that looked remarkably like alarm. "Your ex seems disturbed by our conversation," Roman noted, following her gaze. "Probably shocked I actually came," Vivian replied. "Or perhaps," Roman said, his voice dropping lower, "he's concerned about what I might tell you." "And what would that be?" Vivian asked, suddenly intrigued despite herself. Roman's eyes never left Thomas as he answered. "That he's been using your professional credentials for something highly illegal. That your presence here tonight wasn't a courtesy. It was a calculated move to establish his innocence should things go badly." He turned to her, expression grave. "And that there's a man by the service entrance who's been watching you since you arrived, who isn't part of the hotel security." Vivian nearly dropped her glass. "That's absurd. Thomas is a financial advisor, not a criminal." "And yet," Roman said, raising his glass slightly in Thomas's direction, "look how nervous he appears now that you're speaking with me." Across the room, Thomas excused himself from his bride's side and began making his way toward them, his practiced smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Dance with me," Roman said suddenly, standing and extending his hand. "Unless you'd prefer to have this conversation with him listening." Against her better judgment, Vivian accepted, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor just as Thomas reached their abandoned table. "Who are you really?" she whispered as they moved among the other couples. "Someone who knows exactly what Thomas Elliot has been doing with your identity for the past year," Roman replied, "and someone who can help you protect yourself from what comes next." Shadows of deception. The morning after the wedding found Vivian in Roman's penthouse suite overlooking the city skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a stormy dawn breaking over skyscrapers, while she pored over financial documents spread across a glass table. These transactions, they're all in my name, she whispered, tracing a finger down columns of numbers. Each statement showed transfers she'd never authorized, accounts she'd never opened, all bearing digital signatures that perfectly mimicked her own. How did he get access to my professional credentials? Roman leaned against the windowsill, watching her work. Thomas had your passwords, your security questions. You lived together for 2 years. He had ample opportunity, but why me? Why not just create fictional identities? Because you're real, Roman explained, approaching the table. You have a sterling reputation at Monroe Financial. 15 years of documented expertise. And most importantly, he tapped a particular document. You have security clearance for high-value client portfolios. The perfect shield for his activities. Vivian felt sick. As a senior financial analyst, her digital signature authorized millions in transactions daily. Thomas had leveraged that credibility to move funds for what appeared to be elaborate money laundering operations. These shell companies, she examined the routing details closely. They're sophisticated, but there's a pattern. See how the transactions always divide into specific percentages? 35% here, 42% there. It's mathematical, not random. Roman looked impressed. That's why he needed someone with your skills. The algorithm is designed to avoid standard fraud detection. And you know this because? Vivian fixed him with a skeptical gaze. Roman hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Because I was tracking these transactions before I knew they were connected to Thomas. I work for Blackwell Security Consultants. We investigate financial crimes for certain high-profile clients. Private investigator, then? Something like that. His vague response didn't inspire confidence. Vivian stood, suddenly aware of her vulnerability. I should go to the authorities. They need to know I'm being framed. That would be unwise, Roman said, his tone sharpening. Thomas isn't working alone. He's connected to the Westlake Group. The name sent a chill through her. The Westlake Group was ostensibly a legitimate investment firm, but financial insiders whispered about their connections to organized crime and political corruption. There are officials within regulatory agencies who are complicit, Roman continued. If you walk into the FBI office today, Thomas will know within hours. A security alert chimed from Roman's laptop. He checked the notification, his expression darkening. Someone's accessing your home computer remotely. Right now. Vivian's apartment had been pristine when she'd stopped by earlier to change clothes. Too pristine, she realized now. The subtle disarray that marked her living space, a book left open, charging cables arranged by her preference, had been disturbed by careful hands. My external hard drive, she said suddenly. I kept backup records of all my work transactions. If they find it, they won't, Roman assured her. My team swept your apartment last night while we were at the hotel restaurant. We have your drive secured. Your team? Vivian stepped back. You've been in my home? Monitoring my devices? Who exactly are you working for, Roman? He met her gaze directly. People who want to bring down the Westlake Group. People who recognized your ex was using you as a scapegoat and wanted to prevent that. He paused. People who need your expertise to follow where this money is actually going. A notification appeared on Vivian's phone, an email from her firm's HR department, requesting an urgent meeting tomorrow regarding account irregularities. The trap was closing. I could lose everything, she whispered. My career, my reputation, or, Roman countered, you could help us track the money to its source. Prove your innocence by exposing the entire operation. Her financial analyst's mind was already working, seeing patterns in the data before her. These transactions, their preparation for something bigger. See how the amounts increase systematically? They're testing the channels, making sure they can move larger sums undetected. Roman nodded. We believe they're planning to empty several major investment accounts next week. Over $200 million vanishing into untraceable cryptocurrencies. And my digital signature would authorize the transfers, Vivian concluded, making me the fall person when it's discovered. The reality of her situation settled like a weight on her shoulders. She had days, perhaps hours, before her professional life imploded. Thomas hadn't just betrayed her heart. He'd weaponized their entire relationship against her. I need access to the Monroe financial servers, she said finally, a plan forming in her mind. If I can identify which accounts they're targeting, we could set a trap of our own. Roman smiled for the first time that morning. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to survive this. That afternoon, Vivian returned to her office, playing the role of unsuspecting employee while using specialized software Roman had provided to track login patterns across the firm's network. Thomas's digital fingerprints were everywhere, accessing client information through credentials he shouldn't have possessed. As she worked, she noticed a dark sedan parked across from her building's entrance. The same car appeared outside her favorite coffee shop later, and again near the restaurant where she met Roman for dinner. "We're being watched," she murmured over pasta neither of them was eating. "Yes," Roman acknowledged, "by the Westlake Group and possibly by federal agents. The question is which will move first, and which side are you really on?" Vivian asked, studying his face for any sign of deception. Roman's gaze remained steady. "The side that keeps you alive and free. Right now, that's the only side that matters." Later that night, as they pored over encrypted files in Roman's secure apartment, Vivian found herself drawing closer to this enigmatic man whose life seemed built around secrets. Whether it was Stockholm Syndrome or genuine connection, she couldn't deny the strange trust developing between them, a partnership forged in the shadow of betrayal. "I found it," she said suddenly, isolating a pattern in the code, the algorithm that selects target accounts. They're not just choosing wealthy clients. They're choosing ones with specific transaction patterns that make the thefts harder to detect. Roman leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "Can you predict which accounts they'll hit next?" "Better," Vivian replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I can create a honeypot account that matches their criteria perfectly, one they won't be able to resist." For the first time since receiving that wedding invitation, Vivian felt a surge of something beyond fear, the cold satisfaction of turning the hunter into the hunted. Calculated risk, the penthouse suite had transformed into a command center over the past 72 hours. 3 monitors displayed real-time data from Monroe Financial's servers, tracking suspicious activities flagged by Vivian's custom algorithm. Roman's security team, 4 specialists who appeared and disappeared with military precision, maintained constant surveillance on Thomas and his new bride, who had suspiciously not departed for any honeymoon. "They're making their move tonight," Vivian announced, highlighting a series of preliminary transactions on her screen. "Look at these test transfers, identical to the pattern we identified." Roman studied the data, his expression grim. "Sooner than we expected." "Are the honeypot accounts ready?" "Ready and irresistible," she confirmed. "I've created a perfect target. The Bishop Charitable Foundation. It appears to hold $90 million in assets, but has minimal oversight and predictable verification protocols." What Vivian didn't mention was her unauthorized adjustment to their plan. While Roman believed they were simply tracking the money to gather evidence, she had implemented additional code, a digital signature that would bounce back to Thomas's personal devices when triggered, creating an unbreakable connection between him and the crime. "Someone's attempting to access the system using my credentials," Vivian said suddenly, pointing to an alert flashing on her screen. "They're in." Roman moved behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder as they watched the attack unfold in real time. Despite the danger, Vivian felt a thrill as her professional expertise became a weapon rather than a vulnerability. "They're following exactly the pattern we predicted," she whispered, almost impressed by the technical precision of the attack. Taking the bait completely, the fraudulent transfers began flowing through her honeypot accounts, triggering silent alarms only she and Roman could detect. Each movement revealed more of the complex network Thomas had constructed, accounts in Dubai, the Cayman Islands, Singapore, all connecting through untraceable pathways before converging in a final destination. "Geneva," Roman murmured, studying the endpoint. "Westlake has a private banking relationship with Banque Helvétique. That's where they're consolidating the funds." Vivian's fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced the routing numbers. "There's our evidence. These accounts are all registered to shell companies that track back to Westlake directors." She turned to Roman, triumph in her eyes. "We've got them." "Not yet," Roman cautioned, checking his watch. "Tracing the money is only half the battle. We need to—" The security alarm cut him off, a piercing tone from his phone indicating a perimeter breach. "They're here," Roman said, instantly shifting to combat readiness. He extracted a handgun from a hidden compartment in his desk. "We need to move now." "The evidence?" Vivian protested, reaching for her laptop. Already backed up to secure servers, Roman assured her, guiding her toward a concealed door in the bookcase. This way. Emergency exit. The hidden passage led to a service elevator that descended to the building's underground garage. Roman's security team met them there, surrounding them with practiced efficiency as they transferred to an armored SUV. "Where are we going?" Vivian asked as they accelerated up the ramp into the rainy night. "Safe house outside the city," Roman replied, checking the secure phone that had just received an encrypted message. "Thomas has disappeared from surveillance. His new wife is alone at their apartment, apparently unaware that he's gone." "He's running," Vivian concluded. "He must have detected our countermeasures. Or received warning from his Westlake contacts," Roman added grimly. "Either way, the timetable has accelerated." The safe house turned out to be a modernist structure nestled against forested hills 30 miles from the city. Security systems far beyond standard home protection monitored the perimeter, while bulletproof windows offered sweeping views of the valley below. "You're not just security consultants, are you?" Vivian asked as Roman's team established a temporary command center in the living room. "No private firm has these kinds of resources." Roman studied her for a long moment before answering. "Officially, Blackwell Security works with various government agencies on financial crime investigations. Unofficially," he paused, "some threats require operations outside conventional law enforcement parameters." "Your government, then?" "FBI, CIA. Let's just say we occupy a necessary gray area," he replied, neither confirming nor denying her speculation. Before Vivian could press further, an alert sounded from the communications array. One of Roman's operatives brought up surveillance footage showing Thomas entering a private airfield, carrying only a small leather briefcase. "He's heading for the Westlake corporate jet," Roman observed. "Destination unknown, but likely non-extradition." Vivian felt a strange emptiness watching the man she once loved preparing to flee. "He never cared about anyone but himself, did he? Not me, not his new wife. We were all just convenient covers. People like Thomas see relationships as transactions," Roman said quietly. "Assets and liabilities." "And what do people like you see them as?" Vivian challenged, suddenly needing to understand the man who had upended her life as thoroughly as Thomas had, but in entirely different ways. Roman's expression softened momentarily. "Complicated, dangerous, sometimes worth the risk." Their eyes held for a moment before the tactical situation demanded their attention again. One of Roman's team had intercepted communications indicating federal agents were preparing to arrest Vivian based on evidence Thomas had planted. "We need to move now," Roman decided. "We have enough to expose Westlake and clear your name, but only if we can get our evidence to the right people before Thomas vanishes." "The right people being?" "Assistant Director Helen Morrison, Financial Crimes Division. One of the few we know isn't compromised." Vivian checked the tracking program on her laptop. "Thomas has just authorized the final transfers. My code signature should be activating now." On screen they watched as Thomas's carefully constructed financial house of cards began collapsing. The honeypot accounts triggered security protocols that froze transactions midstream, while Vivian's embedded code redirected verification requests to Thomas's personal devices, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. "That's impressive," Roman acknowledged, watching the digital chaos unfold. "You've essentially created a financial black hole that's pulling in everyone connected to the scheme." "I learned a few things watching you work," Vivian replied, allowing herself a small smile of satisfaction. Within hours, the Westlake operation was in disarray. Federal agents, the legitimate ones, were raiding offices based on the evidence Roman had provided to Assistant Director Morrison. Thomas's private jet had been grounded before takeoff, his expression of shocked betrayal captured perfectly by surveillance cameras as he was led away in handcuffs. Standing on the safe house balcony at dawn, Vivian felt the weight of the past weeks beginning to lift. Her name would be cleared. Her professional reputation, while damaged, could be rebuilt. The future stretched before her, uncertain but unburdened by Thomas's betrayal. "What happens now?" she asked as Roman joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Debriefings, testimonies, the usual bureaucratic aftermath," he said, leaning against the railing beside her. "Your expertise was invaluable. We've been trying to infiltrate Westlake for years, so I was useful to your operation, Vivian observed, testing the waters between them. You were essential, Roman corrected, and not just to the operation. The admission hung in the air between them, neither fully acknowledged nor dismissed. I've been offered a position with a financial security firm in London, Vivian said after a moment. A fresh start. Roman nodded, his expression carefully neutral. London is beautiful. Good restaurants. Terrible weather. The thing is, she continued, turning to face him fully, I've developed an interest in the intersection of financial crimes and national security. I might be looking for consulting opportunities in that field. A smile slowly spread across Roman's face. I might know someone who could use a consultant with your specific talents. Someone who operates in necessary gray areas? She asked, returning his smile. Someone who recognizes calculated risks sometimes yield the greatest returns, he replied, reaching for her hand. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, Vivian laced her fingers through his. For the first time since receiving that wedding invitation, she felt grateful for the path it had set her on, away from deception and toward a truth that, while complicated and dangerous, felt more real than anything she'd known before. The invitation that was meant to be Thomas's final act of cruelty had instead become her first step toward a life she would never have imagined, one where her analytical mind and newfound courage could forge something meaningful from the shadows of betrayal. Roman's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Duty calls, he said reluctantly. I know, Vivian replied, no longer afraid of the uncertainty that awaited. Lead the way. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.